News Talk.
Now then, you're welcome back. So what was supposed to be a Kerry versus Galway or Mayo in the All-Ireland semi-final is no more. Cork have blown open that side of the draw. A first championship win against Kerry since 2012 for Cork. So not since the 80s have we seen that kind of Kerry dominance. Yesterday was 1983 all over again. An amazing finale, both to normal time, Sean Powder winning the free and it being converted, and then most certainly an amazing finale to extra time. We'll hand over here to, and it's fair to say, his voice at this stage had been put through the ringer. Here is Cork 103 FM's Patrick Mulcahy.
Goals have to come into the field. Luke Connolly, 15 seconds left in the clock. Connolly goes on shot. It's high. It's high. He's going to land inside the parallelogram. Still inside the edge of the square. It's gone. It's a goal. It's a goal. It's a goal. McHale has got the goal. Would you believe it? 21 minutes on the clock. Cork have got the goal. What is left in it? They leave by 2 points. Connolly, it's all over. Would you believe it? Cork have won and knocked Kerry out. It's unbelievable.
Patrick, if you're not drinking Manuka honey right now by the gallon, then something is wrong. We have with us Liam McHale and Darran O'Sullivan. I think Liam, he summed it up there pretty well, Patrick, in the end. I mean, it was just the most extraordinary finale to a game. Like for 30 seconds up to that point, it looked like they weren't even going to get a shot away.
Yeah, it was amazing. They were very patient, Cork, and probably a little bit too much at times. I would say, you're going to kick the ball in and have a go. And obviously, Conley took a shot for a goal and skied it. It was quite poor defending from Tommy Walsh. You couldn't have a bigger, more athletic man on the edge of the square, and I think he got a little bit of a nudge. And King slotted away very well. I think the Kerry goalkeeper, expected though for Tommy Walsh to get a hand on it and break it or catch it. And I think he was shocked because he was a little bit slow coming off his line, but it was always that danger was there because, a 2-point spread or a point spread is not enough. And while you're trying to protect that lead, you're always going to be edgy. And we've seen it over and over again. Maybe not as big a games as this, but we've seen these things happen before. And I just thought that the Kerry boys didn't, when they got that 2-point lead, they should have pressed the kick-outs, Cork kick-outs a little bit harder and tried to get that 3-4 point lead where they would have had that bit of comfort in the end.
Darren, we'll give Cork their due credit and talk about them a little later on. But let's start with Kerry. We were talking about Kerry as potential All-Ireland contenders here, and we saw what they did last September against Dublin. There are many brutal realities to what happened yesterday. For instance, I mean, if you had told them pre-game, conditions notwithstanding, Cork are only going to score 10 points here. All you have to do is score 11 points and you're home and hosed. They would have said grand all day long.
Yeah, look, the reality is too many of Kerry players didn't show up in the day. I don't know, was it the case that they were expecting to be allowed to just play the free-flowing football that they wanted to play? I don't really know. But I don't think anyone expected so many of the Kerry fellas to be off colour, like you said, to only score 10 points in normal time, 13 after extra time. I think it was a conversion rate of 13 from 30 attempts, which is just not good enough. It's not going to win you many games. And I think the big factor for me was Cork seemed to be a team playing without fear, with absolutely nothing to lose. And I think the fact that Kerry probably went in feeling they had everything to lose, they looked like a team playing with a bit of fear. Obviously, the conditions weren't going to help, but that's when you need fellas to stand up and be brave. And I just think that they were playing within themselves. They were afraid to make mistakes, and if you play like that, you're going to get caught. That's
a really interesting point. Dublin have become the masters, Darren, against opposition of all kinds, of having a lot to lose. Dublin have a lot to lose at the moment every time they take the field. They seem to park that and play with aggression.
Yeah, that's the difference. That's why they're a great team. I'll say it straight out. I genuinely thought this was a year Kerry would catch them. I was just shocked, really, with the lack of intensity from Kerry. I suppose just the fact that they were like deers caught in the headlights. But that's where Dublin are so far ahead of people. It doesn't matter. Every time they go out, not only are they expected to win, they're expected to put on a bit of a show and win by 10 plus points. And 9 times out of 10, they actually do that. They're just incredibly efficient. They have a way of playing. It doesn't matter who they're playing against or what tactic they have. they stick to their guns and they do it. And a lot of it comes down to mentality. I was involved in a lot of tight games with Dublin that they finished strong and we didn't. And their strongest point is they're mentally stronger than everyone else. They believe in what they're doing and they believe in the fellas around them.
So, Liam, you gave us your analysis there of the Mark Keane goal at the end. What about the Kerry performance overall?
I'd agree with Darran. There were, a Kerry team, any sort of a Kerry team, kicking that amount of wides and making that amount of mistakes is very, very unusual. A lot of people felt, Joe, that they were going to win the All-Ireland this year. I didn't think they would win the All-Ireland this year. I thought they were a little bit too young. A lot of their key players are still very, very young. And Darran can tell you well that it takes time for those fellas to develop and learn how to win games like this. And, the key players are still 21, 22 on that Kerry side, and it's going to take a while for them to be able to compete with the Dublins of this world. And, when we got caught there yesterday and they expected to go 5-6 points up and get that goal, maybe to give them that cushion that they needed, they couldn't get it, Joe. And then everybody gets tight, as Darran said, you start making even more mistakes, and then you give away a sucker goal at the end. So, and the weather made it a little bit more difficult. Tomas O'Shea last night said the game very reeked of complacency, and then you don't have that luxury of a qualifier game coming up, and that added to the pressure. I think that this young Kerry team was on as well, and that probably affected the performance as well.
And Liam, look, nobody escapes without blame after a defeat like this. So, and I'll bring you in on this in a moment, Darran. But Liam, the management obviously have been questioned. Too much fear in the personnel they selected for, borne out maybe by bringing up Douglock in ahead of a Stephen O'Brien. That's been pointed to as indicative of their approach. Too much fear, too defensive, not just going out and taking the game to opposition like Cork.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. When you have that much quality and that much athleticism, that much size around the middle of the field, why wouldn't you press the kick out? Why wouldn't you be aggressive? And why wouldn't you have the mindset that we're going to go out and work these Cork fellas off the pitch and beat them by 9 or 10 points? That's the mindset Dublin always had. We're going to go out and put these fellas to the sword and we're going to kill them off as quickly as we possibly can. And that's what happened yesterday, Joe. 2-point lead into injury time is not enough when you're the red hot favourite and you're a young team trying to get into an All-Ireland final and possibly win an All-Ireland final. And you give a team like Cork that are talented, obviously have struggled for the last few years, but have been coming around. They were competitive against Dublin last year in the qualifiers in the Super 8s. When you give a team like Cork any sort of an avenue, any sort of life, a lot of the times they will take that opportunity. I know there was a lot of luck attached to the goal yesterday, but at the same time, the Kerry lads, when the pressure came on, they just weren't able to put that Cork team away. Cork had a great attitude, as Darran said. They kept fighting, they kept plugging away, and they got the reward at the end.
Peter Keane, Darran, talked about how Kerry did have plenty of opportunities, didn't put them away. He mentioned a 13 out of 30 conversion rate. He talked about game management, taking the ball into contact, all of that sort of stuff. And look, if Kerry had taken their chances, they'd probably get out of jail here. So that is there. But what charge do you put to the Kerry management? What was their biggest failing?
Yeah, look, I suppose as probably a management team, you can't really account for fellas to be missing the chances that Kerry missed yesterday. But I suppose I'd be like, going into the game, I was fairly aware of what way they were going to play. They liked to filter the half forwards back, but then it was about breaking at pace and intensity, and they looked incredibly fit and powerful in the last two league games. But they didn't have that yesterday. The conditions weren't suited to that kind of game. And then I was there going, in my own head, watching, going, right, get back to the old Kerry way of kicking. But we had no link. We had no players on the field that their first instinct was to kick. Obviously, I was looking at it from a Cork point of view. Then I was there going, if the two wing forwards, I know are going to be just dropping back. If I'm a wing back, that's music to my ears. I'm going to be bombing on all day. And that's the way it was. The half forward line by Kerry were on the back foot, and we just didn't seem to change it. I think bringing on Stephen O'Brien, who I thought should have started as was named, but bringing him on in them conditions, it wasn't going to suit his game. His game is all about hard running, kind of taking the ball into contact, drawing players in, but it just wasn't that type of game. I felt like we needed to get on a couple of kickers. I think McHale Burns, who had a great county championship with Crokes, didn't have the best last 2 league ends, but he's a different type of player. He is a kicker. He's a fella who'll get in amongst the breaks and pick out a pass. And it's easy to say it now, obviously, it's hindsight's a fine thing. But that's what we were lacking. I felt we were lacking fellas who were getting the head up and looking for that pass and trying to bypass the war zone in the middle.
Which is, you know, when you're saying like Kerry DNA, you would suspect there's lots of kickers in that team for sure, you know. So conditions negated the transition game they've been working on. So you're saying they needed clever kicking, and there were lads left on the bench or lads elsewhere who maybe might have been better suited to that.
Yeah, look, I think any day you're picked on a Kerry squad or Kerry team, you're a good footballer. And I just feel like, even like we were saying earlier about the one team played without fear and they had nothing to lose, and the other team looked like they were afraid of losing. I think when that fear creeps in, that's when you start to second guess. That's when you start to doubt yourself, and that's when you start trying to take the easier option and not go for them passes. And that was fairly evident there last day. And that's where you want that bit of experience. You know, as mentioned there, I suppose the fellas were very reliant on are Shawnee Shea and David Clifford. They're 21, 22. They're young lads, and we're expecting them to bail us out when things aren't going right. And I suppose none of us expected either of the two of them, but to have all the fellas around them that were really off colour. And it was like a domino effect. Things just started going wrong, and the more things went wrong, I think the more wrong options Kerry started to take, and it just gave Cork oxygen. And the fact that they couldn't extend the lead to 3 and 4 points, it was just you could just see Cork are a confidence team, and the longer they stayed in it, the more nervous Kerry looked.
Yeah, Liam, experience can be an overrated quality, but like when you hear the ages again, the likes of Clifford, these lads, look, in 8, 9, 10 years' time, they'll quickly figure out the nature of that game and maybe, you know, take control of themselves. The message clearly didn't come on from the sideline either to start kicking more, to go about things a different way.
Well, again, I'd agree with Darran 100%. They're very, very young when it comes to extremely talented players. And as you said, Joe, they're probably going to have magnificent careers. But it's not right, and it's not fair to have that weight on their shoulders, you know, in these big games. And I agree with Darran 100%. As regards the kicking game, you withdraw too many players out of your attack, and the Cork lads just sit back when they haven't got the ball. It's very difficult to kick the ball in, no matter how accurate your kickers are, if it's a 4 versus 2 in favour of Cork inside. So I think, and Darran alluded to it, though, I think Kerry lost their shape a lot of the time because they were a little bit apprehensive and got too many fellas behind the ball. And then when they're coming out with it, they had to use the hand pass because they were not outnumbered by Cork defenders up the field. So that's another thing. That's where it's very positive to put up on the kick-out. And if you do in it, you've got guys up there, you can show for the ball, you can make a kick pass, take 4 or 5 defenders out of it, and now you have a really good chance of getting a good shot on goal.
Yeah.
And Kerry didn't do that for, like, say, 3/4 of the game yesterday, which was very, very surprising to me.
Unless they were forced to, because I couldn't believe the stat when I heard it, that Cork went along with 22 out of 23 of their kickouts. So unless Liam Cork said, you know, we're not going to let you press up, we're kicking this into the middle third, it's wet, we're ready for a dogfight, are you?
Yeah, and they did. Like, that's probably a good tactic, you know, with the conditions where they were. And like, the most pressurised footballer on the field now is probably the goalkeeper. They're asked to do so much. It's unbelievable, especially when it comes to kickouts. And, you know, they make one mistake, and that's the biggest, you know, the biggest issue probably of the whole game, in particular a tight game. But they were very, very safe, you know. They just went along and fought for it. And when you're up for it, and the other team might be a little bit complacent, you're probably going to win your fair share of ball in the middle of the field. And that's exactly what happened.
So we haven't given Cork too much credit, and in fairness to them, Ronan McCarthy made the point. This team 2 years ago were beaten, I think, 17 points by Kerry, 15 points by Tyrone. They were dumped down to Division 3. Things were looking shady enough. Liam, what did they do yesterday that was good?
They played with great heart and determination and fought all the way. There was a couple of, when Kerry were 2 points up, Joe, they did a couple of handling errors and a couple of mistakes, and I said, they're gone now, they're starting to fatigue, and Kerry will take over. But Kerry didn't take advantage of those 2 or 3 mistakes that Cork made and left them in the game, and we all know what happened. So the next game will be interesting because Tipperary now will really fancy their chances, and I want to see now how good they are really. Are they going to go out now and beat Tipperary by 7 or 8 points and then get into a semi-final with real confidence? Are they going to go back to playing like passive, careless football like they have in the past? That would be a very interesting game between Tipperary and Cork.
Darren, what do you make of this Cork team? We saw them give Dublin a bit of a rattle at Croke Park last year.
Yeah, like I suppose a couple of weeks before the game, I was in my piece with the Kerry, as I was saying, I was wary of Cork. I did feel at the time they had to go backwards if they were to go forwards, and I think going backwards, probably not as far backwards as they have gone. I don't think they wanted that, but it gave them a chance to bring in these younger lads. Like I suppose last year finished on a fairly positive note. They won a minor, they won an under-20, and they had a good outing against Dublin. They left with a moral victory, we'll call it, and they were always going to be coming in. I think Cian O'Neill is a big addition to them. I think you could see it yesterday in their conditioning, how much of an impact he's already having. I think the county board, for all the stick they get, probably could do it a bit of credit as well, because I suppose the pressure was probably on them when things weren't going right for Ronan McCarthy, but they stuck with him, and they now have a group there who, like he said yesterday, want to play for Cork. And as hard as it was to take the defeat, you know, even hearing today that a lot of cars turned up outside of the ground beeping on the footballers for the win, you know, it's nice to hear that, because they don't get much support there. They're the kind of they're the second cousins really to the hurlers. They're a hurling county, I suppose, and the footballers don't get the same type of love. So look, it's a killer blow. I really fancied Kerry this year, but at the same time, I've been asking for a Kerry-Cork rivalry to be renewed, and it is well and truly renewed now.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
I know.
Liam, and this is in no way disrespectful to the players who phenomenal effort to be fit under the current climate, to be out there playing in tough conditions and with the pressure of knockout and everything else. It was a stinker of a game to watch, though, you know, for the neutral. It felt like 10 seconds didn't go by without the referee blowing his whistle.
Yeah, very poor game. Conditions obviously had a lot to do with it. Cork were determined to stop Kerry as much as possible, be as aggressive as they possibly could be, and turn the middle of the field into a battle zone. And that's kind of what happened for the most part. And Kerry just could not get into a flow. They couldn't get decent ball, as Darren said, into their quality full forward line, especially in young Clifford. And then when things tightened up, they kicked some bad wides, and the rest is history. So, you know, it was a poor game. When Cork and Kerry play, you'd always, like being a Mayo man, you'd always pencil that game in, because you say that's going to be a right game of football. Two very skillful teams that will go out and play football. But I suppose the fact that it was a winner-take-all game, Joe, conditions and the way Cork approached it and got stuck into that young Kerry team, that's the way the game turned out. And of course, the Kerry boys, or the Cork boys, will be delighted. Was the referee too trigger happy? I mean, it felt at times maybe he could just let it develop another couple of seconds and see, could you arm wrestle yourself out of a tackle and just see if some kind of flow could develop? Well, we all want that. The spectators want that. The players want that. Everybody wants that. So I would agree with you there. You know, like as you said, Joe, there was far too much whistle blown. That would affect the Kerry team that are trying to move the ball quickly, trying to get it into the full forward line, trying to play with good spacing, good pace. And when the referee blows the whistle, good players get frustrated and you know, they tighten up. They can't get into a flow. That had a lot to do with it as well yesterday. What about that, Darren? It was a tough game to referee, and I suspect Cork were quite happy for it to be stop-start. What could the referee have done in that situation to try and help things along?
Yeah, it was definitely a tough game to referee in the conditions, but I don't think he refereed in accordance to the conditions. He did seem a bit keen to blow up for frees for both sides. Now, he did as best he can, but I do think the tactic of stopping fellas in the middle of the field was very evident from both sides. Now, to be fair, like I think I commented during the game that Maguire must be nearly double digits for fouls, but they were all smart fouls, and it was up to the referee, I think, to curtail that, and I don't think he did, and that in the end just let fellas do it. It was a bit of a free for all. Every fella they were little fouls. They weren't cynical, or they weren't dangerous. They were just little nitpicking fouls, and he left players away with it. which in turn made the game very stop-start, and it stopped any team from getting any bit of a flow going. So I think if he'd started early with a couple of yellow cards for them blatant small fouls, we might have had a different game. But I don't think Cork would have been complaining. It worked a treat. That middle zone exactly was that. It was a war zone, and that's what they made it. And Kerry just couldn't move the ball quick enough through it because of Cork's intensity and work rate.
Liam, were you coming in there?
I was just going to say that the 2 black cards that Kerry got would have hurt them as well. 10-minute sin bins were tough.
Yeah. So for Mayo and Galway, they're sitting up a bit straighter now, Liam. That side of the draw is suddenly, there's a cleaner route potentially to an All-Ireland final. Mayo beat Roscommon 116 to 13 points, so 6-point win in the end. Once Diarmuid O'Connor got the goal in the first half, it was pretty comfortable. I don't think Roscommon ever pierced, the 6-point lead. It was at 7-8 points for a lot of that game. We're looking at Mayo. We're viewing them as a team in transition. There's a lot of the old guard hanging around, Liam. There's a new batch coming through. How good are they? What can Mayo aspire to do this year?
Well, first and foremost, it was a very good win, Joe, and a badly needed win. When you kind of forget when you hear the commentators saying that Mayo have been in a Connacht final for 5 years. That is amazing. And I think they were eyeing up the bigger picture in previous years, but this year with the younger guys coming in, the transition that everybody's talking about, I think, and the way things are with COVID, I think they're really light up trying to get into a Connacht final and win it, obviously. With more qualifiers and stuff like that. But I think that has all suited them. I expected Mayo to win. They would have been disappointed being relegated to Division 2. But I would have thought in a funny sort of way that would have really sharpened them up mentally for the games that they have coming up in the championship by Leeds from Roscommon and now Galway in the final. Young lads are decent players. They're coming along nicely. And the senior players seem to be playing well. And I often found when I'm playing myself, and I know Darran would say this, when you get to 29, 30, and you start to feel a little bit tired and mentally fatigued after maybe 9 or 10 years playing for the county, some really talented young guys come in and they give you that enthusiasm and that lift that you need. That's what I could see happening in the last 3 or 4 games. I thought they were quite good. I was very disappointed with Roscommon. I know Roscommon very, very well. I think the damage was done in the first half, Joe. I think the Kerry were a little bit negative. I thought that they didn't have enough firepower up front. I think Cox and Donny were the only 2 real threats that they had up front in the first half. It's very easy for a good full back line to deal with that. And then you have the 2 Murthas, you have Conor Devaney and Kieran Lennon sitting on the bench. And Roscommon only scored 5 points in the first half. And as you said, Joe, they're 6, 7, 8 down for the rest of the game. And that game is over. When Diarmuid Murtha came on, he looked very sharp. He kicked 2 great points. Kieran Lennon got on a ball and threw it around. And Conor Devaney came on. So I thought they probably didn't play enough good players up front to get that 8 or 9 points that they needed in the first half to be competitive, to be thereabouts, because they scored 5 in the first half and 8 in the second half. So they were a lot better in the second half, but that coincided with some quality forwards coming in. They started passing the ball a little bit better, and they started had more options up front. And I just thought that they were a little bit passive and a little bit light up front in the first half, and I think that cost them in the end.
Right, okay. Liam, we're just going to ring you back on your phone line. That's just a touch in and out. We'll get you back on a better phone line in just 1 second. Darran, what did you make of it then? So Mayo, obviously, as we said, are in that period of transition. Liam's given a very good account of the game there. What can Mayo do? They've got Galway this Sunday.
Yeah, well, I suppose Galway are going into this game very cold. Not ideal preparation for them. Mayo, on the other hand, have started betting in a couple of younger lads who I think Cillian O'Connor mentioned after the game. They've added a bit of freshness to it, that bit of innocence. They're buzzing for these games. They've waited a while to do it. And I think, similarly to Cork, I think maybe this Mayo team had to go backwards, go forwards in terms of the relegation. I don't actually think will affect them. I think if anything, it's going to be a benefit because it will give them a chance to bet even more fellas next year. But I think bringing in these younger lads, these new players, it does add a bit of freshness. You know, even Aidan O'Shea being positioned now top of the square, if he can get himself comfortable inside there, I don't think there's a man in the country that can mark him. And Cillian O'Connor is the most intelligent footballer in the country and a sharpshooter, so he's only going to thrive playing close to Aidan O'Shea inside if they can get that chemistry going. Yeah,
he looked very sharp again. Liam, I know you're back with us. Something, Jim McGuinness mentioned this last week. We had him on the show, Liam. He was just talking about the fact that most of the teams are playing very similarly to each other at the moment. There's a lot of kind of maybe man for man or man for man plus one. And it's resulting as well in a very lateral game, side to side stuff. He was talking about, you know, what happened to really forcing turnovers and flooding forward, big, you know, quick transitions, all that stuff. Like, it was hard not to look at Roscommon yesterday and have those words ringing in my ear, I have to say. And even to an extent at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. What's with all the lateral stuff? I know, look, one man's boring side-to-side stuff is another man's patient build-up. But, I don't know, it just felt fairly dull at times.
Yeah, and it's hard to watch. But when you don't have your shape again and go back to shape, when you don't press the kick-outs, when you're dropping 10 or 12 fellas behind the ball, you know, it's very, very difficult just to play that type of game, to play that kicking game. And, you know, you allow a team then to dictate the style of the game. And I think that's what happened with Roscommon yesterday and happened with Kerry a little bit as well. So it's all about how you approach the game, how aggressive you are, you know, what kind of shape you have. If you haven't got four forwards up front, you're not going to be able to kick the ball into them. It's as simple as that as far as I can see Joe. But to keep those fellas up front, you got to kind of press the kick out. You got to put their full back line, the opposition's full back line under pressure, and see can you get some steals in the opposition's half. And some teams aren't prepared to do that now. And I would agree with Jim McGuinness. There's too much football going over and back and going lateral and not being aggressive enough and not taking it to them. You know, in fairness to Mayo, we haven't won in All Ireland, but we've been thereabouts for the last 7 or 8 years. We always try and press the kick out. We always try and be aggressive, and we always have a cut. And the aristocrats of that are Dublin in the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years. And, you know, it takes an awful lot of, you need a lot of size, you need a lot of athleticism, you need really hard workers throughout the field. But you could even hear it on the TV yesterday, the Mayo guys shouting pressure, pressure, pressure. You could hear it, James Horn on the sideline, pressure, pressure, pressure. And that was, they were trying to put that pressure on Roscommon 150 metres, right from their full back line, Roscommon's full back line, all throughout the field. And obviously when you're that aggressive and you can sustain that sort of energy and that sort of tackling, it's going to make it very difficult for the opposition to play.
Yeah, well, I would definitely take more of that than the side-to-side stuff, because even Dublin beat Westmeath 22 points to 11, Darran, and after the game, Jack Cooney was saying of Dublin, Westmeath manager was saying of Dublin, they won 10 of our kickouts and they scored 8 points off it, so that summed up the first half. Like, Dublin just choked them, put pressure on, and it just makes for a better spectacle as well.
Yeah, I think that's what, look, we all love that type of football where it's literally you're just going for the kill straight away. And look, Dublin do it better than anyone. And I think that comes from having confidence in themselves and everyone around them and their game plan. And they all know it inside out. I think we all want the free-flowing football. We all want the attack-minded football. But it does seem to be that a lot of other teams are a lot more cagey, a lot more cautious. And at times it just looks like they're afraid to make mistakes. When people are going sideways across the field, a lot of the times they don't even look up to see if there's actually a kick on. So before they even get the ball in their hands, they're already looking sideways to get rid of it as quick as they can. So that can be disappointing and be hard to watch. But a lot of it is it's just being confident in yourself, really. You know, having that game plan, being confident in it, and going for it. And I just think, I suppose there's so much at stake for so many teams. A lot of teams, at times, a lot of players, they're just afraid to make that mistake.
Yeah. And it's like, geez, you've got to show a bit of adventure if you're going to win games as well. You know, I get the kind of danger of knockout hanging over you. A quick text or two for you I'll put to you. So, could you ask Darran about the loss of Donny Buckley from that Kerry sideline? That, he says, the texter, is the big question in Kerry today. Well, he left back in March, was it?
Yeah, I don't think it's a big question, to be honest. Like, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. All I can say is, as far as I can think, is that some of the selectors want a certain role, or maybe they want a bigger say on training or matches, and sometimes people just don't fit together. I worked with Donny, and I think he's brilliant. He's a gent, and he's a great football guy. But some coach and selectors, they just don't fit, and obviously it just wasn't a good fit. But I wouldn't think it was a big thing around Kerry. It's the first I've heard of it, to be honest.
Okay. Could you ask Liam about the influence of his great pal and former basketball coach Terry Kennedy on Mayo this year? He helped Knockmore win a county title, was involved with Mayo for the last couple of years.
I don't know how much he did now. I know Diora was in with him, Joe, as well. I think they were in for 3 or 4 training sessions. I believe it was all about, your footwork, staying in the play, defensive, one-on-one defensive work. So I believe they did 3 or 4 sessions, and I think the players enjoyed it. But to be honest, I don't know exactly. I wasn't talking to the lads, obviously, too much this year with the COVID and stuff like that. But
yeah.
Apparently, I don't know if they're involved now at the moment, but apparently they did a fairly good job, and it went well, and the players enjoyed it. Okay,
very good. In pre-COVID times, are you and Diora still linking up for a pickup game around Ballina somewhere?
Diora's retired now, Joe. I think he turned 60 there a couple of weeks ago. I'm still down playing with the kids, but we don't see Diora around so much now. He's too busy.
Fair enough. Listen, brilliant analysis, fellas. Much appreciated. Liam McHale, Darran O'Sullivan, thanks a mil.
See you, fellas.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Darran. See you,
and
Joe.
I should say as well, Kieran Donaghy was brilliant on OTB AM this morning. He was on with Sharon Owen for about 35 minutes or so. Great analysis of that Kerry Cork game. That's waiting for you on YouTube, on the app if you're looking for some more football analysis, or you can download it on podcast as well. Just search Kieran Donaghy, Kerry Cork. It'll come up one way or another. Back in 1 sec.
Off the ball on News Talk. Tech Talk. With Jess Kelly.
The wait is almost over. We are mere days away from the official release of the PS5 and Xbox Series X. And on the latest Tech Talk, we have a hands-on review of both devices. Are they worth the money, the hype, and the hours of gameplay many of us will invest over the coming months?
Tech Talk. With Jess Kelly.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now at newstalk.com and on the News Talk app.
At Guaranteed Irish, we believe enterprise is at the heart of thriving communities.
Did you know that studyclicks.ie, Ireland's largest study website, is used by more than 150,000 second-level students and over 30,000 teachers? With innovative study and teaching tools offered completely digitally, StudyClicks empowers students to learn independently, helping to support online education in Ireland during the pandemic. Guaranteed Irish welcomes companies that are altogether better choices for our communities, so look out for it. GuaranteedIrish.ie. Altogether better.
A beautiful bouquet of flowers. It can say more than words ever could. To celebrate, congratulate, or just let someone know you're thinking of them. At flowers.ie.